morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth. Thank you for joining me today. Now, before we go any further with the video today, I just want you to know, obviously you will have seen it is a really long one, but this is why I put video chapters in so that you can jump back in and out with ease and not lose your place, especially if I'm talking about subject matters such as palmistry, because this is, I suppose, in some ways a little bit of a workshop. And today's video is an extension of the first part. We talked last week about the shape of hand and the influences on palmistry with that. And so this week we're extending on that information and going more into the shapes, understanding the fingers and the thumbs. And that ends up obviously being quite a big subject matter. And next week we'll look at things like the topography of the hand, and also if I've got time, depending on time available, don't want to make another massive video, we'll look at the lines then, but we'll see how we go. Either way, for now, if you're not interested in the palmistry and you just want to have a channel update, you can go straight down to the channel update. Otherwise, if you are interested in the palmistry content, just remember there are chapters. You only have to click on the numbers and that will take you to the part of the video where you want to find the information that you're looking for. I will also put a link to last week's yarning video in the description so that you can go straight to the hand stuff, the palmistry stuff, if this is what you're interested in. Good morning, good evening. So I did actually have a theme that I was going to put up for Chitter Chatter today, but however, I have decided to adapt and adjust. I want to make the point of saying thank you to new subscribers and for returning visitors as well. And I'm going to respond to a comment that was put up by Teagan Turner on the slide for Metatron, the Archangel Metatron. You'll find that video on the playlist, and I do talk about it a little later in this video. But either way, Teagan, first of all, I want to say a big thank you. Thank you for participating. And just in case people haven't seen it, I'll read it out, what she said to me. She says that my information generally aligns with what she understands, and I'm reading this as a quote here. She can add that although she's not seen the Akashic records, she has gotten many downloads directly, and for her it's a bit disappointing that she hasn't gone there yet, is what she says. But she also says it's all good, I still get what I need. My APs are usually very high vibrational, and it usually looks and feels very white, like at the train station in the Deathly Hallows from Harry Potter. Look, I've got to say I haven't watched a lot of the Harry Potter videos, so that actually is not something I can relate to, but I'm sure other people can. And she says, kind of how Neville Goddard describes heaven as the golden couch of God, all good fun. Thank you. I mean, that's brilliant. Definitely light and love responses there. So for those people, translation here. AP is obviously an acronym, and to be honest, it's not one that I'm familiar with, but I guess it would mean something like the angel protectors or ascended persons. Teagan might be able to clarify this. Either way, I am assuming that it is a very high vibrational spirit entity, or what I might call a celestial being. Now, the other thing is I wanted to respond to her comment that she hasn't been there yet, and I would say most likely she has. She just doesn't have conscious recollection of the visit, because Teagan, in all honesty, this is not uncommon, and I think this is one of the reasons why I decided to really focus my intent to be able to go there and to have conscious recollection of the visit. And we can say, look, a lot of this stuff is actually motivated by seeing that other people have it, and a case of I want it too, because I'm pretty sure that was what motivated me back in the day. It wasn't just that I wanted access to the information, which actually that should be a story in itself. I probably should put a video up of my experience and what I actually recall, which was interesting. There's reasons for it, and I understand it in hindsight why I didn't have conscious recollection of a lot of the information that was given to me. Actually, I will put it in here. I remember my response being unimpressed, and me actually turning around and saying to, because in my experience it was a person with a book, did I think I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof before I was actually born, and I think I even may have, because obviously I'm pretty argumentative apparently, and at a core level, I think, you've got to have a sense of humour about this stuff. Obviously, my recollections are that I wasn't sure that I would be able to achieve everything that I had set myself as tasks in this life. I don't remember everything I was told. I remember my response to it, and that's very telling. And I remember thinking that I had been over ambitious before the planning stage. So, yes, that was my recollections of it. No real recollections. I've had to live my path, I guess, where I look back, where I'm very instinctual. I have to rely on my gut instincts as to determine what it is I need to do next, what feels right for me to be able to do. And sometimes what feels like the right thing to do doesn't feel like the easy thing to do. And it's been very challenging at different times. And then at different times as well, there have been great rewards have come to me. And I remember that these great rewards, I would say, have come actually from a space of suffering and enduring. And I've actually turned around and said to people at different times, at the times I was going through these difficult parts of my life, it all became clear when the rewards came in. Then I understood that I had to go through those experiences to get to that great experience, if that makes sense. So I just went off on a diversion from my notes there. Basically, look, where I was going to go and aiming to go as a response to your comment was that you said you get the information anyway as a download. And that reminded me of a lady I knew her many years ago now, and she would not have defined herself as being particularly spiritual, and she definitely was not what we would call a spirit communicator or medium, and she certainly didn't have active clairs at a conscious level, but she did have a very kind and caring aspect to her, and she was quite driven. She was quite focused on material and career pursuits, but not at all costs, of course. She had some ethics and integrity about her. And she had said to me that at different times in her life, she would become stuck. And it was at these times where she was really at crossroads and didn't know what to do. She would just go and find herself a quiet space. And I would call it sit in a meditative position with her palms upright and focus on her breath while also repeating a statement. Now, obviously, she's focused her intent before she's gone into this, which is, I'm lost, I don't know what to do, along the lines of this. I think this is what I'm meant to do, but if it's not, best you show me what I'm meant to be doing, and best you at least show me what I need to do next, some such, right? And she would say, you need to download the data to me so I know what my next move is. And so when she would take this position, she would then just be repeating to herself continuously, download the data, download the data. And what she said to me is if she didn't get a download while she was sitting and breathing, later as she went about the business throughout her day, she said then she would get the light bulb moments and it was like a great big computer download into her brain. Quite interesting. I also want to thank you because your comments about Neville Goddard I perceive as being a direction for me to help grow me. So thank you for that, right? I'll be doing some research into him because I've actually never heard of him. And I would say your comment is basically the powers that be going, take a look at this dude, okay? Now, at a glance, I did do a quick Google and I saw that he refers to a golden stairway. And also the golden couch that you're talking about. Now, I have different descriptions for these. So where I'm going just at a glance is that as with the Akashic records or Akashic, however you pronounce it, it would appear to me that there is more of the same but different, because we all personalise what it is we're seeing and understanding. And if I had some more time, I would definitely share some funny stories of my own and my experiences of stairways and even thrones. And just before I go into the palmistry content, I want to give that reminder that we don't all have the same experiences. That same but different also includes for the library and the records. For those people that do get to manage there and get there and have conscious recollection, I've been told their versions includes things like seeing their life plan on scrolls or on books or even on computer discs. What I like to do is let people have their own experiences and then share their experiences with me, and we do a shared growing. So anyway, Teagan, just want to say thank you again. And I invite other people to find the video or respond to this one here, make a comment, let me know your experiences, because this really could open the door to some great discussions. Thanks again. Now, moving on. So, on with today's content, which is focused on the theme of palmistry again and what we can learn from a person's finger shape. This is obviously before we go into the lines. Most people tend to associate reading of palms with the lines on the hand, but there is so much more involved. And we did enter into this discussion last week. So, I'll put a link to last week's video in the description so that you can go and see the content about the hand. Anyway, back to this particular slide. What we've got here, the first thing we need to identify is what the fingers are when we're referring to the finger and trying to interpret it and do an analysis of what this basically reveals about a person's character. So I've created this graphic here and I've put numbers on the fingers. So obviously what you can see here is that the finger names are that the thumb is referred to as the Mars, 2 is the index finger, which is also known as Jupiter, because we have astrological influences. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get into what the astrological influences are for the video today, because I have a feeling this is going to be a long video. I'll do as much as I can within the time frames. Now, the other thing, of course, and we're not going to look at all of this today either, but the hand consists of what is referred to as mounts and planes. So I have given you the formal names of these. This list we're going to refer back to as we go through the video and as we go through the palmistry stuff. Because we can't, as with everything, including numerology, we can't look at something as being cut and dried. We can't turn around and say, well, the thumb says X and Y, and because your thumb looks like this, therefore that means X. Okay, there are other influencing factors, and the factors that we're talking about that will influence include things such as the flexibility, length of the fingers and the thumb, and how it interacts with the rest of the fingers and thumb and that kind of stuff on the hand. That was a bit not particularly professional as a descriptor, but hey, it is what it is. So, for example, when we're talking about flexibility of the fingers, we're talking from a general perspective and from an individual perspective. So, generally, or as an overall indicator, the flexibility of the fingers is pretty well where they're able to arch gently backwards from the hand, as in this description here or this image. We would take a look at how flexible they are with that. And for some people, they might not be able to get their fingers to flex at all. Some people, it may actually be quite rigid. So the idea is to check your own hand. So, the best way to do anything is to work upon yourself first. Take a look of what it means for you. Check your own hands and write a comment down if you feel inclined in the video description, or even just make a note of it for your own reference. How flexible are your fingers? Okay, because the idea is that a very flexible hand like this reveals a person's capacity to adapt easily to new ideas and situations. If the hand is stiff, or the fingers are stiff rather, from a general perspective, we're looking at a person who's got a more rigid personality type. They are often associated with quite social and conventional approaches to life, and that includes within their intimate relationships. However, if the tip of the Mercury finger, which I believe is the Pinkie, as I draw upon my mind, if that's able to bend back further than the rest of the fingers, then this indicates a person that has a good communication style. So other influences from a general perspective are that when we looked at the hands, we can recognize easily we all have a dominant hand. We're going to be right-handed or left-handed. Some people are ambidextrous, but they will probably still have a preferred hand that they tend to use. And the same applies to the fingers. There will be a dominant finger, which provides keynote information about a person's character. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we look at the actual interpretation of the individual fingers, because there's more to discuss within this. So we're just looking generally here. So I have used this chart of hands again to give us an overall perspective here. If you take a look at the image M3, you're going to see that the ring man is leaning in towards the middle man. And if you take a look at F7, you're going to see that the Pinkie and the index and the ring man are all veering towards the middle man, who is quite straight. So within this context, you would say that the middleman most definitely is the dominating finger. However, in F3, what you'll see is the middleman and the ringman veering toward each other. So they're both in competition to be the dominant finger. So when it comes to analysing the length of fingers, the way we do this is to measure them one specific finger, which is the middle finger, within the context of the palm. And that way we determine whether or not they're long fingers or short fingers. Now, for instance, with this particular hand image that we've got here, when I looked at this, I thought that was a proportionate hand until I actually measured. So the way you measure it is you start by measuring the middle finger. You put your thumb at the bottom, the base of the middle finger. This is how I did it. This is the easy way. And then put my index finger to the middle point of the second phalange of the finger, okay, of the middle fingers, if that makes sense. That's that top blue arrow. So you measure that, and then you put your fingers down the bottom at the base of your palm, and you measure whether or not that arrow comes to the center of the palm. And this is where I've put the red dot. So it's a little bit hit and miss here, but it gives you an indicator. Now, what I did was I created the red arrow to show this is exactly the same size arrow. I just copied the arrow and turned it red. Okay, so what we see here is that red arrow actually falls short of reaching the base of the middle finger because the blue one down the bottom doesn't hit the center of the palm. So what I realized after doing this little activity was this palm actually has short, or this hand, not the palm, has short fingers. Now, the other thing that I did is just something for myself to experiment with. I did the activity on both my dominant hand and my non-dominant hand. So I'm right-handed, and what I found was that my left hand, which is my non-dominant hand, actually had shorter fingers than my right hand, my dominant hand. So let me know, give it a go, and let me know if that actually is the same for you or if there's a difference. Just remember, your dominant hand is the one that you use a lot. If you're right-handed, the right hand will be your dominant hand. Stumbling over my words here. So generally speaking, people with short fingers tend to be more instinctual. They tend to rely more on their intuition and less on analysis in the detail. They can be impulsive and impatient within relationships, and they're able to quickly understand any issues and problems and if I can speak, can perceive the hidden meanings within a conversation. So it would be pointless to try lying to them or to lie by omission because they're actually going to pick up on it. They have a very capable or they've got a great capacity for seeing the big picture problems, unless they've got knotty fingers. I say unless, there's a disclaimer on that, and we will look at what that means shortly. People with longer fingers, on the other hand, no pun intended, they tend to be very patient and they do love detail, which is the opposite to people with short fingers. They do tend to be overthinkers and more analytical, and they can be more introspective, and on the not so positive side, they can harbour grudges and resentment if they feel hurt or betrayed. Now, if you were to look at M2, you're going to notice this is a hand which is a bit pudgy, it's fleshier, and this will reflect a sensuousness or a sensuality about the person. These people with this kind of hand are going to appreciate the finer things in life and to have nice surroundings, and of course associated with luxury, rich food and intimacy. Thin, bony fingers will tend to reveal a more intellectual nature, a person who's less sensate. They're less responsive to physiological sensations, and they can even be a little bit insensitive, if you like. They don't necessarily become aware or recognise their emotions, and they may form a level of detachment from this world of feelings and instead focus on their intellectual pursuits. So when it comes to knuckles, they also are revealing, okay? If the fingers are smooth and devoid of lumps and bumps, especially around this area of the knuckles, these people can also be intuitive. Even if they've got short fingers and things that say that they're not and all the rest of it, these become the influencing factors, okay? So the people that have got the smooth fingers that are devoid of lumps and bumps, They can be intuitive, they can be impulsive, and they can often have difficulty breaking down problems into manageable components, and therefore they can become impatient with the details. They will, however, tend to respond to the hunches and their feelings as opposed to examining the facts. Now, in relationships, they can often be in touch with how they feel and unfiltered in their verbal and emotional expressions. And this includes whether those feelings are love or anger or joy. Okay, they will just say it as they see it or feel it. Now, if the fingers are short and smooth, on the other hand, these traits are accentuated. But if the fingers are long, then this will tend to strengthen the intellectual and the analytical aspects. Decision making will still be slow. As I take a swallow, sorry about that. Okay, knotty fingers that are not due to arthritis can reveal a very strong and analytical mind, with people that are rarely influenced or seduced by appearances. They can be very cautious when entering into new relationships, and they may lack spontaneity, and certainly demonstrating spontaneous emotions. They may not, they wouldn't be impulsive, and they would likely find it difficult to express their true feelings to others. The image on the left has large knuckles on a pudgy hand with conical fingers. So that hand actually would be called a spatulate hand, and the fingers are also conical with big knuckles. And with the phalanges of the finger, these all have specific meanings or influences, if you like. So with the phalanges on all of them, the first phalange, which is obviously the fingertip, that refers to thinking, processing, and the mind. The second phalange, which is the middle one, it refers to physical activity and action, the doing aspect of life, whereas the third phalange refers to the material, the sensory. And the third phalange, of course, as you see on this image here, is the one that connects the finger to the palm. Now, of course, there are other things that influence the hand and the fingers, and this is how the fingers lean in towards each other in this business of a dominant finger. But when you look at the individual phalanges, if the top phalange is the longest one, this is going to indicate that a person is more focused on the mindful activities, thinking and analysis. A long middle phalange, on the other hand, if that's the greatest space, if that's longer than the other ones, that's going to suggest that a person is more of a doer than a thinker. And if the base phalange is long and thick, then it reflects a person who's far more grounded in the material aspects of life and the sensory aspects, not the emotional, rather the tactile experiences of life. Just remember that the variations are going to be there with finger to finger as well, okay, because each finger's got a meaning, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So I struggled to get some appropriate images for you here, but combining the image on the right with the images on the left is going to be helpful for identifying the spatulate finger shape. Although obviously the photograph is of a spatulate thumb and it's got an hourglass, which is why I've put the hourglass there. That's called a waisted spatulate thumb, and we'll talk more about what that means in a moment. But the image of the finger on the side shows that, yes, it's a spatulate finger, but the fingernail is not quite right. It should actually flare a bit out to the sides from my understanding of what a spatulate finger is. But anyway, before we start talking about thumbs, let's do an overview of the fingers. The conical fingers represent the creative aspect. People tend to be romantic, receptive to external stimuli. They can be inconsistent, but they're versatile and they're very instinctive. The conic finger is pointed at the top and wider at the base. Spatulate fingers, of course, indicate an adventurous person who's physically active. They can be very earthy and impulsive and extremely sensual. What I have noticed is that these seem to be quite common in people that like rock climbing. People with square fingers, they tend to love order and systems, so they tend to be stable, conventional and dependable and rational, and they like organisation. The person with the rounded finger tends to be adaptable. They have a well-rounded approach to life, but they're receptive and more balanced. They can be analytical, but not to the point of ignoring their emotions. And they're not so emotional that they can't rationalize and process their feelings. The fingernail shape tends to be more squarish, like you see on here. Yeah, that's probably correct. Let me know what you think and if you feel that we're in the right direction here. In regard to the psychic finger, this was a little difficult as well to get images that actually match. The hands can have obviously the different influences such as psychic, but when it comes to the fingers, it's not just about the finger shape. The fingernail shape is very important. And so it's easy to mix up the conic round finger with the psychic finger. And for me, I kind of see that the fingernails are the big identifier with which is a psychic finger, because the psychic finger is actually fairly straight. You may as well say, in the black and white image, the ringman finger, you can see it's fairly straight. It's not conical. It's not like the fingers in the image on the left. So it's a straight type finger, but the fingernail is kind of curved as well. It's straight but curved, and the difference is that the psychic fingernail, when it's in its natural state, it doesn't actually overgrow the top of the finger like we see on the image on the left. Okay, so this is why I'm kind of relying on the black and white image to show not only the psychic finger as in the ringman, but also to bear in mind that you can have a hand that's got more than one finger type on it. So anyway, bearing in mind, people with what we call psychic fingers, they tend to be very strongly affected by the things that occur in their environment. They can be highly sensitive, idealistic, emotional, and at times impractical, and I guess we would call them highly strung. Either way, just this reminder that hands can combine multiple finger shapes, so we need to look at the qualities of each finger as part of identifying or doing a psychological analysis. But before we do that, though, we've got to take a look at the thumb, because the thumb is important. So the thumb relates to a person's ego and their strength, as well as their passion and capacity to endure. Size and length of the thumb and the shape is going to be important. Now, when we measure the thumb, typically the top of the thumb should reach the lower level of the first phalange, which is of the index finger, okay, or what we call the Jupiter finger. If you look at the images here, I decided to put some lines in to provide a bit of clarity. It's a bit hasty, it's not perfect, but you get a fairly good idea. So the arrows are the markers. F1 appears to have a longish thumb because it's toward the upper end of the base phalange of the index finger. F7 most definitely has a long thumb. F8 appears to have a short thumb, but it's still within the realm of what I consider to be a typical or average thumb length if you were using this scale. Even M5 looks a little short to the eye, but within the context of the hand it actually isn't. A long thumb indicates that a person's got a heightened libido and lots of energy and quite a forceful personality. Now, within a relationship, these types of people with a long thumb are going to tend to be the dominant partner because of their forceful personalities, and typically they like to be the centre of attention. Those people that have got a short thumb will tend to be obviously less forceful. They can lack self-confidence, and they become an easy target, shall we say, for people to dominate them or to have them subject them to their will. But, okay, there's a but with this. The length of the thumb is not the only relevant aspect, of course, to interpreting the thumb. The position on the thumb, where it sits, also has relevance. It's also important. So where the thumb sits in relation to the hand is what we call the thumb set. Now, I've put these little photographs on top of these hand images. They're not the best, but they're indicators. So you could take a look at your own hand and ask yourself the questions, you know. A low thumb set is one where you've got basically a 90-degree angle. It's like an L. A medium or moderate thumb set is one that's about 60 degrees. And the high thumb set is one where you've got a 45-degree angle there. So take a look at your hand and do a bit of a comparison. So a person with a low set thumb, this reveals a personality that's got self-confidence, there's an independence to it. These people are comfortable to take risks, if I can speak properly. What else can I say about this? I think, in all honesty, it would indicate a person who's potentially not only impulsive, but could also be rash, even irrational, taking unnecessary risks without giving consideration or thought to the consequence of the actions and whether or not they're going to be helpful or not. They tend to be spontaneous, even impulsive, and this character trait will also be part of how they behave within their intimate relationships. On the other hand, if a person's got a high thumb set, this is the 45-degree angle, the person would likely repress their emotions and probably restrict their personal demonstrations of affection because they don't like to lose control. They've got a fairly firm grip of themselves and their boundaries, and they can be quite conventional in their tastes and approaches to life. They would probably be fearful of letting go and releasing all their inhibitions. Yeah, that's about all I can say to that. We also need to have an understanding of capacity to interpret the phalanges of the thumb as well. So the tip of the thumb, the bit with the fingernail on it, is said to influence a person's will or their capacity to direct and focus their attention on their goals. A strong will phalange is one that's rounded, it's long, so we're talking about the top of the thumb that has the fingernail on it. It should be rounded, long and wide, and this indicates decisiveness and tenacity and the ability to translate ideas into action. Now, if the phalange is conic shape, right, we're talking about this top one, the person's energy can become scattered and the person will likely have difficulty dealing effectively with any problems that require persistence and endurance and attention if it's going to be over the long term. If the thumb is thin or flat when viewed from the side, it's likely to indicate a person who's highly strung or nervous. And if the tip of the thumb is squarish, then the person's approach to relationships is going to be underpinned by practicality and rationality. A spatulate thumb tip will indicate somebody who's instinctual or impulsive and approaches to relationships, shall we say, intimate relationships, will probably be based more on libido or affection rather than whether or not it's a logical or rational decision to get involved with a person. Their heart would rule their head. When it comes to the second phalange, this relates to the logic and rational decision making. And the third phalange is the large fleshy part of your palm that is actually referred to as the Mount of Venus. Now, the Mount of Venus is an indicator of our capacity for love, emotional expression, and of course, demonstrations of affection within intimate relationships. But we're going to talk more about the Mount of Venus when we talk about the topography of the hand. So where the thumb tip or the first phalange with the nail attached to it is related to will, those people that have got a squarish tip, they'll tend to be the practical and rational people within relationships. They won't be easily inflamed and they won't be making any rash and impulsive decisions. Where I think it's a little bit of fun is when we talk about the spatulate thumb. The spatulate thumb, as you see here with this rounded tip, is extremely rare, very rare. You can see that it's got this breadth across the top, and this wasted bit, the bit that looks like an hourglass, this is actually called a wasted thumb. People with wasted thumbs, they're even less common, and they will tend to make their decisions instinctually or intuitively. And some people believe that this wasted thumb is a sign of tact and diplomacy in business. Now, either way, people with a spatulate thumb tip, as in this photograph, will likely be a dynamic and very interesting person to be around. Things just seem to happen to them and for them. Now, the other thing too, which this is the bit that I find really funny, The spatulate thumb is unkindly referred to as the murderer's thumb, and this is when the thumb tip is kind of clubbed. It doesn't actually mean that a person has got homicidal tendencies. What it means is that basically the person represses aspects of their feelings so often and so much that they can actually be explosive with strong, sudden outbursts of temper, if I can speak. Now, if you're in a relationship with somebody that's got this kind of thumb, then the idea is actually to be very tactful and sensitive to their unspoken needs because of this capacity to repress, okay? They need to be encouraged to actually say what they're feeling or what they're thinking, because this emotional repression leads them to say yes to things that they would rather say no to. Now, if the hand is also coarse, where you've got this, what we call the murderer's thumb. If the hand skin is also coarse, if it's got a reddish texture, it's said to indicate violence associated with these temper outbursts, which is possibly actually where the name murderer's thumb comes from. Now, once again, I would recommend that people not make assumptions or reach conclusions unless they've done a full analysis, because we can jump to all sorts of inaccurate conclusions relying on one form of analysis. So I just want to reiterate here that the spatulate thumb or the wasted thumb is actually a positive. They are positives. So you might want to, if you're unclear about this, just press replay on this slide to hear it. It doesn't, the murderer's thumb doesn't mean a person is homicidal. It simply means that they repress their emotions. And when people repress their emotions, yes, there is a risk of an emotional outburst. It's like the bottle explodes. Thumb flexibility is also relevant, and most of us probably would go through our lives and not know if we've got a flexible thumb or not. But when we look at these images, we can actually see what a flexible thumb looks like and what a rigid thumb looks like. The image on the right is actually called a hitchhiker's thumb. The image on the left is a straight or a rigid thumb. The hitchhiker's thumb being highly supple and flexible, this reveals emotional versatility and a capacity to adjust and adapt to people and social situations. They see people, they can be very generous with their loved ones. If the thumb is extremely flexible, as in this one, and can bend to 90 degrees, this person can be generous to a fault, and they can often find themselves being used and exploited by people around them. If the rest of the hand is flexible as well, then there's going to be a tendency to be extravagant with money, and they may have, well, according to the information and my reference book here, they've got little self-control or willpower, and they will likely struggle to be monogamous or faithful in a relationship. If a thumb is moderately flexible and can bend back a little, when just a small amount of pressure is applied to it, these people are going to tend to be more practical. They're going to rely more on their common sense as opposed to emotions. They can be open-minded, they're willing to adapt, but they can also be strong-willed and tenacious if the need arises. Stiff thumbs, such as the image on the left, on the other hand, these people can be stubborn, they can be prudent, they can struggle to adapt to other people's needs within the context of relationships. And now, I say this, but there is also the business of unless the rest of the fingers are more flexible. However, these people, as a positive, do tend to be very stable, they're very responsible, and you can rely on them. If they say they're going to do something, they will, and that is integrity. That's something I admire. Finger spacing, of course, is relevant. For instance, if the fingers at the end are closely together when the hand is open and relaxed, this indicates that an individual can be quite timid and fearful and really lack self-confidence, and this consequently paves the way for dependency in relationships. Now, if the Jupiter finger, which is the index finger, Mr. Pointy, breaks away from the rest of the fingers, then this indicates leadership and self-reliance is increased, really. They're quite independent and they want to take charge and they want to be the people that make decisions. And this is especially within intimate relationships. I think the best example of this is probably M1 or F5 in these images. But I must say, your opinion is relevant here as well. That it's very difficult from these images that I've got. What else can I say? Just basically, look, if the index finger breaks away from the middle finger, then this person's going to be inclined to try and hide any feelings of inadequacy and insecurity through drawing attention to themselves within social situations. They could most likely be the jester at the party. A large space between the middle and the ring man can indicate an unconventional personality. And in some cases, the more extreme cases, two separate personality types within the one, if you like. Not necessarily schizophrenia or bipolar, but two distinct personality traits within the one person. If we were to compare this to Astro, we'd probably say it would be like the Gemini. They've got a very strong, beautiful aspect to their personality, and then they have this high risk-taking aspect to their personality as well that is not quite as attractive. If you know Geminis, you know what I mean. And if you're a Gemini, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so this is not a split personality, but it's two distinct personality types or aspects of self. So fingernails are important as well. I mean, we can all make assumptions about a person based on the way they care for their nails. You know, some people bite their nails, sometimes they've got ratty looking cuticles or whatever, but that's not what we're talking about when it comes to palmistry. What we're talking about is the shape of the fingernail, the basic fingernail. And we don't see this in these images here, of course, but we're looking at the way those shapes of fingernails relate to the actual finger. And this again refers to the influences on a person's hand, because you can have, as I said before, you can have multiple finger types on a hand, and then you might have a conic hand with a square fingernail, things like this. So basically, if you were following this and trying to do a hand analysis of yourself, you would just take the content and write down what is relevant for you, perhaps on each finger. You know, how long is each phalange on your middle finger, your index finger? Just break it down, okay? So anyway, back to the fingernails. Looking at my notes. Long, broad, slightly rounded nails, they indicate an openness and a broad-mindedness and a non-critical nature. The long, narrow, pointy nails point towards suspicion and selfishness. I would say, see the silver fingernails. You know, these are all false fingernails here anyway. But if this was the natural state of it, this is what you could assume or gain as information from the actual natural fingernail. Okay, so the long, narrow nails, as I said, they tend to point towards suspicion and selfishness. These people will tend to be narrow-minded. They can be quite calculating within their relationships. Short nails that are not a result of chewing reveal a critical nature, which focuses on not only what they perceive as character flaws in other people, but they're extremely critical of themselves, and they have tendencies to self-sabotage, or the other thing is not quite self-sabotage, but they will downplay their own talents and positive traits when they in fact deserve to be recognised for them. So when it comes to nail colour, the reds will indicate a high libido. We're talking here about the natural colour, okay? Which we're not talking about nail polish. We're talking about when a person's fingernails have the hues of colours underneath them. So if did I say cuticle or the nail pad? I'm talking, just to be clear here, I'm talking about the fingernails in their natural state. If there is a reddish tinge, this will indicate a high libido and a passionate nature, very focused on physical aspects. However, once again, these people may be prone to flashes of intense anger or rage, and we would encourage these people to find outlets for this excess energy that is outside of the intimate moments of life. So, of course, I'm being filtered and censoring myself a little bit here as well. We're talking about somebody who probably a Scorpio, very lusty, you know, going by the stereotypes of a Scorpio. we would need to encourage them to find healthy outlets for the release of this passionate energy that lies within. Bright pink nails will tend to reflect and modify this libido to an extent, and there'll be a greater balance of, balance between the physical and emotional expressions of care and love and passion. A pink nail reveals good circulation and, of course, a warm and affectionate nature. If the person has a bluish nail and they don't have a blood circulation disorder, these people can be somewhat cold and reserved and even have difficulty with emotional expression and affection. It's not that they lack feelings, it's just they need time to warm up to people, especially within these special intimate relationships. Pale nails, pale, almost sounds like pale ale. This indicates a low physical vitality and a low libido unless it's modified by other hand characteristics. So as I said, we're not going to be talking about the mountains and plains in this video, possibly the next one. Today I'm trying to focus on the fingers and the thumbs, the digits, right? But what I've done is I've created this diagram that actually reminds us of the finger names, and then I've also put in the numbers to show us of the mountains and plains. Now, as you saw in the previous slides, each finger's got a name, and it's named after what we call a celestial or a heavenly body, and that in turn is named after a Greek or a Roman god or goddess, and these represent the aspects or the character of the mythological entity. So with the Jupiter finger, we're talking about the index finger, which many of us will know from our childhood as Mr. Pointy. Now, the qualities reflected in this finger are things such as ambition, charisma, inspiration, leadership, and magnanimity. Now, ideally, from a form perspective, the index finger should reach the top, or not the top, the middle of the first phalange of the middle finger. So we're talking about the top digit that's got the fingernail on it. A well-formed hand or a proportionate hand is going to have that index finger that comes midway up that phalange, okay? Now, to give you an idea, I think probably the image in M4 or even M5. What do you think? M1 might be an option as well. Now, if the index finger is longer than the ring man, and goes past the mid, so there's two parts to this. If it is longer than your ring finger and goes above the midpoint of the index finger, then the person will carry natural leadership attributes. I'm hazarding and saying I think this is images F7 and F2. However, if they've got a long, strong index finger, this can indicate a tendency to be vain, domineering, and controlling. So it's associated with a big ego that seeks conquest over others. Now, if the index finger is shorter than the ring finger, so perhaps the images in F8, I've noted these down and put question marks, F8, M3 and M4, then it's likely this person will lack confidence and have low self-esteem, especially when the head and lifelines are joined at the beginning of them on the hand. But we'll talk about the lines of the hand in future videos. Then the next thing is where the index finger, if I can speak, bends towards the middle finger. Now this is definitely F4. The positive core qualities of the finger start to become distorted, and there is a tendency for these people to be possessive and jealous. And if the fingertip is pointed, the person will tend to be idealistic in love and romance. If the tip is squarish, then they're going to be more pragmatic in their approaches to relationships and to life in general. So the middle finger is the one that we call Saturn, or is governed by Saturn, and it governs propriety, responsibility, and the subconscious aspects of personality that are represented by both Apollo and Mercury, as well as the influences of the thumb tip. So we don't just read this standalone. When the middle finger is straight, there's a harmony between the will and emotions, as well as social inclusion. They're comfortable at social gatherings, and they can also balance their life, creating enough time to be with people and for that solo rest and recreation. If the middleman curves slightly toward the index finger, so this is potentially image F6, there's going to be a level of spontaneity and an outgoing nature is inferred, where the person for the best part of the time will enjoy the company of others. But if the middleman bends towards the ringman, I would say image F5 or M5 here, then there's a preference for solitude over the company of others. And there may even be a melancholy aspect to this personality type. It doesn't mean that the person is antisocial, it just simply means that they're comfortable in their own space. But if the curve is sharp, then the person may suffer from chronic depression. So the ring finger, which we know as ringman, if we were taught this in our childhood, but is actually in palmistry and whatever, is known as the finger of Saturn or Apollo. Okay, so I'm just going to call it ringman to make it easier. The ringman is the creative aspect of self. There's a love of the arts, music, and ability for expressing thoughts and feelings. Now, it should be, as said before, the same length as the index finger, if it was a proportionate hand, and come to the middle of the top phalange of the middle finger. Now, this type of hand shape, if you like, measurement, indicates a person is confident, has got good self-esteem, overall feelings of well-being and the world and their place within it. They're happy within it, and comfortable within it. Now, if the ringman is longer, there may be a lowered self-esteem or the person struggles to stand up for themselves. The tendency to allow other people to dictate and dominate them can be remedied if this person has got a firm amount of upper Mars, or when the head and lifelines are not joined at the place where they commence. Now, generally a well-formed ringman finger makes for bright, interesting and happy people with a flair for nice clothes, and an ability to fit in well in all social situations. If the ringman is straight, then the person is likely to be a good judge of character and relationships. Yes, they tend to be grounded in reality. They don't over-romanticize. Sorry about the lip smacking there. Some palm readers do believe that when the ringman bends towards the middleman, it indicates that a person is a gambler or somebody that's got questionable morals and ethics, for want of a better description. And if the top phalange of the ring finger is a spatulate fingertip, then it's said to increase a person's communication skills and relatability to others, particularly within group situations. And if the pinky finger is long, as well as the ringman, then these gifts are said to be enhanced. So this video is incredibly long. I'm going to stop it as soon as I finish this slide in regard to the palmistry content and go into the channel update, and I will revisit the next phases and stages of palmistry on next week's yarning video. But for now, okay, when we talk about the Mercury finger, of course we're talking about the pinky or the little finger, and Mercury was the messenger of the gods. So the Mercury finger governs the ability to be able to communicate with other people. And this is in public, so group speaking and in intimate relationships. A straight Mercury finger indicates that the person is honest and trustworthy and potentially even a little bit naive in business and romance because they're trustworthy, trusting, probably too trusting. If there is a slight curve towards the ring finger, then there will be a level of diplomacy and astuteness. But if it bends sharply towards the ringmen, and this isn't caused by arthritis or injury, there may be a tendency to be dishonest or even manipulative in relationships. And if the bending toward the ringman is really sharp and includes a sharp bend of the index finger toward the middle finger, then it's going to indicate that a person is driven and that they will not allow anything to prevent them from achieving their desires. This might be F7. I don't know. What do you think? So as far as the angel content goes for now, from my side of things, I've actually created as much as I'm going to do with that particular playlist at this time. And there's only a handful of angel videos that are yet to be published. They're scheduled and basically set to be released so that you can view the content, listen to them, provide your feedback, leave comments, thoughts, beliefs, understandings. As I keep saying, it's when we pull together our information that we can all grow and expand and develop. But anyway, so we've got the Angel playlist. It's rocking on. It's not long until I'm going to have to start loading new content and creating a new playlist, and that's on the agenda. We'll talk about that soon. So for those of you that haven't seen it yet, this week we published the Angel of Unity, Shekinah, and she provides strategy and information. I say she, but actually my understanding is that the Shekinah is actually a masculine angel. However, I get a bit challenged creating the images, so I made her a lady. So in this instance, Shekinah is a lady, feminine type entity, if you like, but the message of the video, of course, is about the merging and connection of the mind, body and spirit. Naturally, being the word unity, we're talking about unifying. So just a reminder, the video on Metatron, the Angel of Thought, was published this week, and this is why we had the comments up in the Chitter chatter section, because we do make a reference to the fact that Metatron also, there's a lot involved with him, and that includes the Akashic records. So feel free to check that one out. You'll find it on the Angel playlist. So next week, I believe on Tuesday, you're going to be able to access the content on the Angel of Power, Sandalphon, who basically gives strategy to overcoming any fears that you might have in regard to being a powerful person, so that you can reclaim, harness your power and direct it. And this involves harnessing the power of emotions, because they're really quite a force to be reckoned with when directed in positive ways. So that's on Tuesday. I think it's on Friday that the video of the Angel of, and I've called it Kundalini, but it's actually, as I understand it, the Angel of, got to use that word, sensuality, sexuality, whatever it is, because when we talk about this kind of energy, it is hugely, massively passionate energy. Now, if you want to do anything, you've got to harness the passion if you want to manifest and make things happen. Now, I decided, for the sake of YouTube and for the videos, to refer to this angel as the Angel of Kundalini, quite simply because we're talking about the energy that's sitting at the base of the spine, like the tailbone. I will actually give you a little bit of information about Kundalini, that basically when you try and force that Kundalini chakra open, it can actually be quite painful, which is what happened to me. It's not necessarily the case with everybody. Maybe I should talk about Kundalini and my experience on a separate video, because I would compare it to many, many years ago. I think I was about 16 or 17. I fell over and I broke my tailbone. And after that, it healed, of course, but at different times, if we were doing long road trips and that kind of thing, because this is Australia and sometimes you might drive 10 hours a day and that kind of thing. But when I was on long road trips, sometimes the tailbone would actually play up and be extremely painful. Sounds ridiculous now, but I remember that there were times where I actually would take my seatbelt off. Sorry, Mr. Police Officer. But actually hang myself over the front seat simply to get the pressure off my tailbone, because it was so painful. So the reason I'm mentioning this is, when you try and force this Kundalini chakra open, as I did, I felt that the pain was comparable to that moment of having to hang over the seat of the car because I couldn't sit down. So basically, the emphasis of the Angel of Kundalini is actually on sexual energy and being able to harness that and direct it positively. Now, I don't know if I discussed this in the video because I mentioned it so long ago, or I created it now so long ago, in as far as I've done a lot of stuff since then. But one of the life lessons for the Scorpio, because we look at the astrology, most people go like, oh, Scorpio is like, well, they've got a high libido, this kind of thing, right? But their life lesson is, apparently, I don't know where I found this information, but I got it years ago, is that they actually would be really exceptional hands-on healers, because they have this high drive about them, and it's being able to convert that drive from lust into healing energy. That was the bit. That were the words I was looking for. Okay, so when we talk about the Angel of Kundalini, this is what we're talking about. Okay, I'll leave that with you. So where the Reiki manuals are concerned, I mean, I have done up, basically, you may as well say I'm writing up short books. One of them is what do I need to know? That's one of the books. What do I need to know if I decide to do Reiki? Okay, that's one of them. Then the next one is a manual, Reiki 1, Reiki 2. And as I said, these are very large ones. I've almost completed them. I have done some more work on them. But I must admit, I've kind of put them on a back burner this week yet again, because actually I don't feel anybody is really that interested in doing it yet. I mean, if you want to do it, let me know. I will then prioritise, just write a comment below. I will prioritise the content on the manuals so that we can get into talking about the Reiki healing. So just a reminder for people that we've got a number of playlists already on the channel. If you're new, you may not be aware of it. If you're a returning visitor, you may have forgotten. Okay, what I try and do is put up information that's going to help you. And these channels are based both on my understandings of spirit, spiritual law, my studies of the metaphysical, and also my studies of social work and mental health. Okay, so we have the more mainstream content on health and wellbeing, self-help, that will have potentially some evidence-based material on there. And if it doesn't, it will tell you that this is anecdotal information that would conform to mainstream professional experts, if you like. Then, of course, I've got the playlists on angels. Self-help can be things like breathing or just whatever. Take a look there. We've also got the chakra content. We've got a playlist for that. We've got a playlist on color and messages. We've got the numerology playlist, which is basically an online workshop about numerology. The only thing I haven't put on there is how to establish what a person's karmic life path is. I haven't been asked to do it, but I've also got a little bit of inner conflict about whether or not it's appropriate to put this up on the channel. And then, of course, I have got the playlist for universal, or what we call spiritual law. And that's basically just an open for discussion playlist. You know, it creates the space for thought, reflection. And of course, you are welcome, invited, encouraged to leave feedback and your thoughts about anything that I put up. And that includes if you disagree with the content. So in regard to what's coming soon, and bearing in mind that the angel content is almost completed as far as scheduling, I do have some plans ahead. Basically, it will be one. There's going to be a playlist on crystals, a new playlist, and I'll be sharing my understandings of crystals based on actually not just using them myself and researching them for my own personal benefit, but I did at some point in time go into selling crystals, ordering them, wholesaling them, and going to fairs and selling my crystals at fairs. And it's quite revealing what the crystals imply or how people are drawn to them. Suffice to say, what really I think started to tickle my fancy is because you quite often find men who are completely skeptical and not into anything metaphysical that attend these fairs, fairs, actually they probably have fears too, but they go along with their wives or partners because they're trying to be supportive while rolling their eyes to the back of their head most of the time. And they would kind of turn up at my stall if I, because when I used to do these fairs, I didn't do the psychic readings. I used to just sell the crystals. And they would rock up at my stall, literally, because it seemed to be, I guess, the most easy for them to relate to or whatever, because they're pretty. Everybody likes pretty rocks, okay? So they would come over to my stall and they would scan my table and automatically pick one up. And what I used to love to do is turn around and say, oh, as you do, because this is what I do. Oh, you're addressing some tooth issues at the moment, are you? Or, oh, you do realise that one's good for money and abundance. You must have some worries about money at the moment, do you? And however, I just wouldn't do leading ones. I would feed them a line that related to the healing properties of the crystals. And they would always look absolutely horrified and say, how do you know? Are you a psychic? And it would be like, well, yeah, I am actually, but I'm not open to doing psychic readings right now. I only know this about you because you went for that crystal. The same as women, usually mature women who've got children that are guilting them out, with this whole, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, I'm sad and miserable in my life because you were that kind of mother, right? Well, these kind of mothers will actually always go for the same crystal. That's always, without fail. Actually, there is probably two of them, but I automatically know that is the issue that they're addressing in their home environment if they go to one specific crystal. And that's the kind of information I'm going to share on the channel. But anyway, where I'm going with this is, I might actually do an announcement and say, look, can somebody help me out? To be able to do a reliable video on this stuff, I actually need to be able to access some really good photos, because I don't, one, I'm not very good at photography, and I'm not particularly good at technology either when it comes to using the phone. So I need somebody that can actually provide me with some good quality photographs of crystals that I can talk about the crystals with, because I need to be able to show off things like the flaws. People don't realize when I talk about stuff here, like, crystals have got planes, flaws, occlusions and all of this kind of stuff, people won't really know what I mean. Now, I'm a bit fearful of using other people's photos these days because of copyright. I almost got done really badly, probably about 2 years ago now, and I had to do some swift talking. But anyway, enough of that. I'm going to wind this up. So, my friends, if you've made it this far, you are absolute legends. Well done. Thank you for being part of my journey. I look forward to hearing and seeing any of your comments that you want to put up. I'm open to all feedback, as you know. In the meantime, I'm not going to drag this on. I'm just going to say love you, leave you. Have a blessed day, fruitful week, and I will catch you on the next video. Take care. Until then, bye-bye for now.